Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started with our church service. My name is Louise, and I'm music director here. Thanks for being here. Oh, how about a stretch? Okay, now we're going to start with a song. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says sing. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, I'm gonna sing, Lord, Lord. I'm gonna sing when the Spirit says sing. We're gonna do what the Spirit says do. We're gonna do what the Spirit says do. What the Spirit says do, we're gonna do, Lord, Lord. We're gonna do what the Spirit says do. We're gonna shout when the Spirit says shout. We're gonna shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, we're gonna shout, Lord, Lord. Shout when the Spirit says shout. We're gonna love when the Spirit says love. We're gonna love when the Spirit says love. When the Spirit says love, we're gonna love, oh Lord. We're gonna love when the Spirit says love. We're gonna march when the Spirit says march. We're gonna march when the Spirit says march. When the Spirit says march, we're gonna march, Lord, Lord. We're gonna march when the Spirit says march. We're gonna pray when the Spirit says pray. We're gonna pray when the Spirit says pray. When the Spirit says pray, we're gonna pray, Lord, Lord. We're gonna pray when the Spirit says pray. We're gonna do what the Spirit says do. We're gonna do what the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, we're gonna do, Lord, Lord. We're gonna do what the Spirit says do. We're gonna do what the Spirit says do. We're gonna do what the Spirit says do. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. And you will be welcomed a few more times.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. My name is Joseph Hepburn, and we are all members here. We are here to welcome you to this unique interfaith community that is dedicated to social justice. Now, you may be wondering if you are welcome here. You are welcome because we are interfaith. You are welcome if we are Jewish, if you're Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, atheist, or as one patient said to me some time ago, religious atheist, whatever the combination, or something else altogether. You are welcome if you just came in from a protest march, or you aren't able to attend protest marches right now, or are confused about what to do. You are welcome if you miss Pride Month activities, or if you are participating in some that are online. You are welcome if you don't have a job, if you never had a job, or if you don't want a job. You are welcome if you want to be at church before you travel to England, or if you need to find a church on your return from England. We extend a special invitation to those who are single, married, divorced, gay, transgender, filthy rich, or dirt poor. We extend a special invitation to those who are just browsing, just woke up, or just got out of jail. We extend a special welcome if you are more religious than the Pope, or more ceremonial than the new king. We don't care if you're more religious. We extend a special invitation to those who are over 60, but not grown up yet, and to teenagers who are growing up too fast. We invite soccer moms, tree huggers, latte sippers, all We invite those who are still in recovery or still addicted. We invite you if you're having problems or you're down in the dumps or you don't like organized religion. We invite you, whatever state you are in. We invite those who are still in recovery or still struggling from the various forms of addiction. We offer a special invitation to those who work too hard, who don't work, can't spell, or because they are bored with staying home all day and heard that this was a strange church. We invite those who are inked, pierced, or both. And we offer a special invitation to those still remembering or affected by losses from 9/11. We invite tourists, seekers, doubters, bleeding hearts, and you. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. Welcome.
Thank you, Chaplain Joseph. Now, to better arrive here, we'll do a chant by Thich Nhat Hanh. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. And we'll sing that 3 times. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. Janet.
I'm Janet Gollery McKithen. I'm the minister here at the church in Ocean Park, and I also welcome you to this diverse community. It is diverse and people have different opinions, and so you may hear things that you disagree with, and that's by intention because we can widen our perspectives the more perspectives we hear. So if you hear something that you disagree with, it doesn't mean that that's what the church in Ocean Park stands for. That is one person's opinion, and your opinion is just as important as that person. We are sitting on the land. I want to acknowledge whose land we're sitting on. The church in Ocean Park is sitting on the land of the Tongva, the Kish, and the Chumash peoples, who we stole from violently through murder and rape and displacement of their peoples. There are many who are still among us, and we cherish that, and we honor them, and we commit to being a part of the culture of repair. We are also on the land that was built on the backs of people taken from Africa and who built it, and we are benefiting from all of that. So we take a moment to realize and recognize on whose land and whose backs we sit. Take a moment. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. Louise, you're muted.
Thank you. Now we're going to have another song, which I like, by Sarah Thompson. She's a beautiful singer from Minnesota. It's called Where Did Jesus Go? I put the lyrics in the chat so you can follow along or sing along. It's got a great chorus you can sing with. Tell me where, oh where did Jesus go? That brown-skinned man walking the road to Jericho. Tell me where did Jesus go? He's up and been deported to Mexico. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. What you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got, and love is all you do. It's bigger than me, and it's bigger than you. Hallelujah. Tell me where is Jesus now? That Middle Eastern man who could feed a hungry crowd. Tell me where is Jesus now? He's on a list of terrorists and they've tossed him out of town. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. What you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got, and love is all you do. It's bigger than me, and it's bigger than you. Hallelujah. Tell me where, if you know, do tell. That wise guy wasting time with the woman at the well. Tell me where, if you know, do tell. They say he's queer and out of here and going straight to hell. Hallelujah. I'll be there too. Hallelujah. What you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got, and love is all you do. It's bigger than me, and it's bigger than you. Hallelujah. Tell me where I search and I search for that storytelling man. I can't find him in the church. He walked out the door, took off his sandals and shook off all the dirt. Hallelujah. Last time now. Hallelujah. Oh, what you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got, and love is all you do. It's bigger than me, and it's bigger than you. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Everybody now. Oh, what you gonna do? Hallelujah. I'm gonna stand by you. Love is all you got, and love is all you do. It's bigger than me, and it's bigger than you. Hallelujah.
I get the pleasure of introducing our friend Jim Lafferty, who was here with us about a few months ago, and we wanted more. We wanted more the next day. We didn't want to wait this long, but we've waited with bated breath for a few months. If you've demonstrated for justice or have listened to KPFK in the past 20 years, you're familiar with the voice and mind of Jim Lafferty. His Lawyers Guild show has been on the air for over 26 years on KPFK, where he has served both as board member and interim general manager. Jim was the national director of the National Lawyers Guild during the vital years 1963 to 67, and has been the 26-year executive director of the Los Angeles chapter. Jim organized the Mississippi Freedom Project in 1964, which brought the first contingent of Northern lawyers to the South to represent civil rights activists, including Martin Luther King and John Lewis. He has worked for justice his whole life, organizing national rallies and demonstration to oppose wars in Vietnam, Central America, and the Middle East, sailing the seas as an advocate for merchant seafarers, and going to court to obtain march permits and defend the rights of protesters. The origin of his lifelong commitment to justice seems rooted in early life, in the contradiction between what he heard at home and what he experienced in community. His mother, who had been orphaned then reclaimed, grew up to marry a Mr. Lafferty, but the father of her son was a man Jim only knew as Uncle Charlie. Growing up poor but not hungry, as Jim puts it, he attended the neighborhood public school and had a job by age 12. In high school, he was assigned to Central High in an upscale neighborhood where the majority of his classmates were Jewish. In those critical years of self-discovery, when Jim was finally processing new information about the true nature of his family, he realized that as a poor white child, he'd long been the odd man out among African Americans and Jews in his neighborhood and at school. But he'd had friends, and the racist things he heard at home contradicted his experience of his peers and their parents. As he told us, I grew up finding it really, really unjust to be lied to and to hear other people lied about. Jim Lafferty doesn't let that happen without a fight, and he wins, whether broadcasting the truth, empowering others to speak at rallies, or defending victims of institutional injustice in court. Jim, luckily, has no plans to retire. He says justice is a constant struggle, but I find hope, as always, in the people. Some of you remember that Jim Lafferty was one of the folks who helped us train us in de-escalation after the white supremacists came in 2017. And we were preparing for a huge onslaught of white supremacists at the next Committee for Racial Justice meeting. So we were trained by Jim and we were ready to go. So ready, in fact, that they turned tail and ran. So we welcome back Jim Lafferty.
Janet, that was very kind, overly kind. And Joseph, I just wanted to check with one thing before I started. You mentioned everyone who's welcome in your church, and it's one of the things I love about your church, but you didn't mention heathens like me. And so I just wanted to make sure that I qualified as well. I think I do, because you've always been so welcoming, but you know.
You said atheist.
Sure, you do.
Okay, all right. No, everybody should hear about this. Joseph, you're a wonderful spokesperson for it. I've learned over the years working with people like Teresa Bonpane and Blaise Bonpane and others, and it goes way back, that whatever my own non-religious beliefs may be, I'm blessed to be surrounded by political activists of great integrity from the religious community who have played a central role in any struggle I've been involved in. I can tell you, man, it's been much appreciated. You're all very fortunate as well, of course, to have Janet, who's the kind of minister that, I don't know, maybe if I'd had Janet, you see, as a minister, as a young child, I wouldn't have turned out to be this sinner. I don't know. But anyway, my topic today was suggested by Janet, and so I comply. And it encompasses some of the central problems that are apparent in our nation today, having to do with the health of the nation and what our nation should be thinking and doing to solve those problems, is what she asked me to address a bit. I'm going to do that by way of an introduction to what I hope then is a discussion of it, because I think that would be as important as any part of today's presentation. I find myself thinking about little less these days than these problems. The title of the talk, you remember, is Can America's Nativism, Racism, and Imperialism Be Overcome? Its tribalism healed and its democracy saved. So I'm going to lay out some of the main beats of why I think those are some critical issues facing us today, and what might be some of the ingredients if we hope to solve those problems. And when I do that, I will also do, as Janet has requested, that I address the issue of whether or not we have any reason at all to be hopeful that our nation will overcome and survive these very pernicious problems. One last point, I've happily lived long enough to know and to be willing to admit that I've been wrong many times in the past, and will no doubt be wrong again, and maybe wrong about everything I'm saying today. I always allow that. So you won't hurt my feelings if during the Q&A you point out those errors and set us straight. And also a couple of last things before I dive in. I certainly know that there are other issues. Indeed, no lesser person than Noam Chomsky says the two greatest issues facing the world today are climate change and of course, a nuclear meltdown, nuclear holocaust. I'm not discussing either of those today. And Also, I'm not at any point today will I be in any great detail, at any rate, talking about the role that the capitalist nation we find ourselves living in plays in these issues, although there will be certainly some references to that. First, the issue of the growing nativism and the tribalism that it spawns. I think it's the first time in my life that the term tribalism has been used in respect to this. We've certainly had periods of nativism before in this country. But the Republican Party, principally with the help of religiously sectarian Supreme Court, is really trying to create a nation within a nation, where red states, can legislate anything they damn well please, and without fear court reversals, where America can get back to those good old days, where America was populated by true Americans and not foreign misfits and people of the non-Christian, faith and so on. The American people indeed are more divided today than they have been since the Civil War. And isn't it interesting and sad that the matter of racism, which played such a central role in the Civil War, is playing such a central role in the problems we are facing in this country today. The historic Black Lives Matter movement at its peak amassed millions in the streets, arguably the greatest outpouring of people in the streets of America around a just cause or any cause in the history of this country, addressing police abuse, white privilege, and what have you. And yet, despite these massive protests all over the country, the end of institutionalized racism, to say nothing of police abuse, is not where we might have hoped it would have been at this point in time of that movement. But I remain hopeful in that regard because it served to educate and mobilize so many people that it suggests that when the time is ripe, we can again have that kind of a powerful movement on behalf of that just cause. Nationalism and tribalism, though, in the United States has advanced really, I'm content, to such a degree that political and societal differences, cultural differences, which were once settled pretty much through peaceful disputes, at least, or on the ballot box, are now the excuse for violent confrontations and the passing, of course, ever more undemocratic laws, Jim Crow laws and the like. It's a tribalism between those who understand and welcome, really. I'm sorry, it's the tribalism between, I say, those who understand and welcome the demographic changes that flow from really the effects of globalization, and those who see those demographic changes as somehow an existential threat to our so-called traditional ways of life. Hence the replacement theories, emergence in the public debate. Ignorance and fear have driven, well, we know at least 40 million of us still to QAnon and its warnings of Democratic Party pedophilia and Jewish aliens. It's bizarre. A majority of Republican Party voters, as we know, think that Biden was not really elected president in the last election. And indeed, 10% of the millions who are in support of the January 6th insurrection believe it is now appropriate, as they've seen that unfold, to engage in violence in order to bring about what they want America to be. I truly believe, and I say this without hesitation in this church, because I suspect you would agree with me, that Christian white privilege, racism and sexism, the fear of immigrants, of color, Jews and Muslims, have created really this tribalism, this political and cultural division in the country, which is in many ways, as I say, reminiscent of our Civil War, and certainly has not been seen in such an extent since then. In fact, as a result of that, many historians far wiser and more studied in this than me are, if not predicting, acknowledging that a second Civil War is certainly to be considered as a real possibility in the very near future. Now, meanwhile, U.S. imperialism, of course, which we're also discussing today, has grown and expanded more than ever and become more and more dangerous. There's the matter of war we were talking about, I guess, before we all started. As we watch and we worry about the war in Ukraine and worry whether it will spread to other nations or turn nuclear. Let's not kid ourselves, though. The war in Ukraine is already a war between the United States and Russia. I mean, it may be a proxy war, but America can't simply supply one side of that war with billions and billions of dollars in weapons, and more than that, we now know, have its generals tell the military of Ukraine where to fight those battles and how to fight those battles, and claim not to be a participant in the war. In addition to that, the United States has at least, we're talking about imperialism, as we know, 140 military bases still all over the world. At any given moment, it's about 150 nations of the world where the United States is engaged in some form of military action or military assistance to people. I don't mean just by providing weapons, but helping them wage whatever little wars they may be involved in. And already, of course, the war in Ukraine itself has spread to so many other nations in that it now threatens the very survival of millions of people beyond the borders of Ukraine. Why? Well, because the real prospect of starvation, people in Europe are already seeing their heating bills. The poor will, I don't know, rub sticks together is what I guess the government will ask of them. It's bizarre. But you've got millions of people all over the world who depend on the grain that normally comes from there, who will not have it. And there are great worries within the UN of millions starving to death as a result of this particular war. So wars these days are not confined to the boundaries in which they may or may not be actually being fought. Our gravest threat, though, I think, that we're discussing today is the very real possibility, some would say, and I guess I'm among those some who would say very real likelihood, that what is left, the little that is left of our democracy will not be left for long. And this is, again, simply not my belief, but belief, again, of a growing number of respected historians and others who have made their life's work studying this very issue, who fear very much so that that's the direction we're heading. Indeed, already in the world bodies that measure the how good a democracy we have, we've fallen to number 26, and we're now a partial democracy in the eyes of those organizations. And I think that's about as generous as they should be. And this really shouldn't surprise us because we weren't born as a truly democratic nation. We know that in the first place. We don't learn that in school, you know, as such, but we know that. The slaves, 3/4 of a person, the US Senate and, you know, Maryland and Idaho have as many senators as does California and New York and all the rest of that. And ever since that growing democracy negating effects of big money has played more and more of a role, the reduction in the number of voting days, the requirement for voting IDs, the influence of giant media corporations who wins election, together with the constitutional requirement to give states with very small populations the number of senators that allows them then to have such a disproportionate vote in the with electors. And more recently, ever since the Supreme Court's decision in the voting rights case, election laws in a goodly number of states have quite openly set the stage for a 2024 presidential election takeover. Make no mistake, our already very limited democracy is hanging on by a thread, for I fully believe that given the Supreme Court's overruling in that case, given the number of states that have already passed and are still considering passing these undemocratic election laws and electing Trumpian candidates to the state offices controlling how electoral votes are cast and how electors are chosen, I think all of that, no matter which party actually wins the popular vote in 2024, I have great fears that it will be the Republican candidate, whoever she or he may be, that will be installed as the president. And if not, that the civil war that people were so worried about, we talked about earlier, will happen. Well, I don't think anything, I suspect, I could be wrong, but I don't think anything I've said today is anything that anybody listening to do is not aware of. And so it leaves really the more important question, I suppose, is what is to be done? That age-old question, what is to be done? And to which I would add to the question that what's to be done that will work, of course, and can these problems be solved? What's the hope? You know, as I was reading James Baldwin again the other day, and I came across that great quote of his where I've got it here. He says, I've come to embrace, quote unquote, the wise desire not to be betrayed by too much hoping in America. Well, I mean, I suppose that's a good position for us to take. For one thing, it keeps us active. We don't quietly think things are fine. So I look ahead with a rather jaundiced eye, finding it hard to see how it could all turn out as it should, but I'm not without all hope or any hope. So to answer the question, what should be done? I think we should first remember and take some comfort in remembering that things can change, for better or worse, sometimes for worse. But the one thing we can be certain of is that things can and do change. And so really the deeper question for us today and going forward is, how can we make things change and change in a positive way? How can we bring about a more just and peaceful nation? How can we stop our warlike ways, our racist white privilege, end America's tribalism, and save what I say is that democracy hanging on by a thread? Well, first and most important and toughest, I think, will be we got to find a way to end the tribalism that has left our country so divided. Because when you're that divided as tribalism, there's nothing can penetrate. You know, it's like if you're rooting for the Dodgers, you can't find in your heart to say much of anything good about the team they're playing. So truth to be told, there's some rather critical things that we need to do in that regard. There's a tendency right now, we look at the other side as the enemy and so forth, as opposed to simply the product, really, of an economic system that has really allowed in many ways and created in many ways this tribalism to develop. Because after all, the people on the other side, who are really not our enemies, although they behave that way, and see the way feel we do, of course, as well. They're struggling to get their human needs met in many cases, not those who might lead them or fund their enterprises, but the average man and woman who finds themselves falling into that position, that hateful, sadly, position. They're now scared to death about their place in America. They think they've been purposely let out, and all these new people have come in and they don't recognize the place anymore. And what about them? And they've been frightened. I often say when Trump was elected, he simply picked up the rock under which you could find all too much racism and xenophobia and sexism and you name it. And boy, is it ever flourishing. And so out of fear, they're easily aroused to the racism, the xenophobia, and so much that fear of the others. So what do we do to end that tribalism? You got to talk to people. You've got to find ways of reaching out to people on the other side. There have been other times in history where things were not quite as divided, obviously, where that did work. Reach out to them, listen to them, sympathize with their fears that are legitimate, those that are, while pointing out that what is really threatening their living standards and traditional ways of life is not the other, but the economic system, as I say, we live under. A system that only works when there are winners and losers. In short, to help them understand that it is the nature of the capitalist nation itself, a nation like ours, to profit from keeping people divided. The slave owners understood that. Their appeal to the white Southerners was, hey, at least you ain't that. And you don't want to be that. You want to be with us. And they're doing the same thing now, really. To explain that the only other they need to really fear is the corporate oligarchy that is ruling this country now. And I started to see, I guess, ruining this country now as well. We've got to do what the right wing has done. That's something else we've got to do, and get more involved in local school boards. I understand you're having a forum tonight at this church where you're considering some candidates for local school board. For too long, we've left that to the folks in the other tribe. And we see the results of that, what's going on all over the country in that regard. We've done shows about it on both the Lawyers Guild show that I host here, co-host here, and Law and Disorder, the national show that I also co-host. We've talked about that because it really is pernicious. Well, there's no reason why it has to be them that are running the school boards and trying to decide what books are in the library. Why are we so lazy? They understood that early on. They understood, in fact, whether they articulate it or not, the role that education has played in miseducating the people in the other tribe. And they want to keep that, from their point of view, correct education going and make sure we don't get our hands into the pie. Now, how do we go about doing that? Well, one way is to have church congregations, unions, other societal institutions, bring together people and try to have these conversations. New York Times and others have done studies where they've gotten people together for a certain number of days and after a certain number of things, they find there's more agreement and less hostility. And it's a really difficult job. And I don't suggest that it's easily done. I don't know if it can be done to a significant degree to matter, but it seems to me it's something we ought to certainly be trying to do. I'm convinced that if we could find more common ground between us and them, that we would be at least better off than we are. Even modest measures can be of some help, such as getting more and more states, as is happening now, to adopt ranked choice voting. As one who thinks that we have to have an entirely new political system in this country. Obviously, I'm not suggesting this is the total answer, but in terms of talking about tribalism, nationalism, we have found that that produces less right-wing nuts when you have choice voting. I've never quite, I understand choice voting. We do that at KPFK. I don't know quite how it's turned out this way, but there's been some studies of it already that have shown anywhere from 18 to 20% better result, if you will, for the kind of nation we would want to see. City and county and state elections should be taken more seriously than they are currently as well. Once again, those in the other tribe, not only school boards, they paid a lot more attention to local politics than I think our side has in some regards. The fight for abortion rights, against racism, union organizing laws, economic justice, a lot of that is happening at the local level in one form or another, and so we should be a part of that as well. So those who support or want to achieve a true democracy in America must get into that fight as well. I think we have to be dogged and determined when it comes to these neo-fascist foes. And I wonder, and I don't know if there's anybody who's seen a study on this, but I don't think that the majority of American people, although if you ask them now what the most important issue is in these elections coming up, the loss of our democracy is right up near the top, which really pleasantly surprised me. But I don't know to what extent people agree with me, because I'm sort of an alarmist about it. I really think it's likely to happen. I don't think it's just possible that it's going to happen. If I were Jimmy the Greek, is Jimmy the Greek in Las Vegas still alive? I don't know. Vince, you would know. No, if he's still alive, I bet you anything he's betting that what I suggested before might happen in the 2024 presidential election is likely to happen. So we've got to really better be organized. We've got to be dogged and determined with these foes. Happily, the majority of American youth, and Janet, when you asked me about where do I find some hope, it's certainly with the youth of this country, the majority of which, or plurality at least of which, if not a clear majority of which, prefer a socialist economic system to the capitalist system. Indeed, although you'd never know it from how they vote, and this is a great frustration to those of us who don't tend to vote for capitalist politicians. The majority of registered Democrats who consider themselves dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, if you ask them, think that a socialist economic system would actually be better for America than a capitalist one. But well, there you are. But more maybe, and just to wrap up, we have no time to lose. But again, remember this. We've overcome some great historic evils and divisions in the past in this country. The evil of slavery, the evil tearing apart of America during the Civil War, the evil of children sent to work in factories, the attacks on unions, the anti-communist witch hunts, the denial of women's rights, racist laws, the Vietnam War, and so much more demonstrate that history itself has often been on our side. And so remembering that so much of history itself is on our side, then let us vow today to start doing the kind of hard work, understand the crisis we're in, and doing the kind of hard work that can make a dent in that nationalism, end that tribalism, and the unjust system of governance that threatens to destroy us all, and that threatens really nothing less than destroy the United States of America. And I'll stop there. I've probably already gone on too long.
Wow. Thank you so much. Step by step, the longest march can be one, can be one. Many stones to form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none. Sing this with me. Step by step the longest march can be one, can be one. Many stones to form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none. And by union what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn the mill, singly none, singly none, singly none, singly none.
Thank you, Louise, and thank you so much, Jim, for that insightful and amazing message. I really appreciate how you somehow were able to do all of that in such a brief amount of time. And we could listen to you for a very long time. Very, very interesting and insightful. So now is the time for community sharing. And what that means is you get a chance, anybody, doesn't matter if you've never been here before, your first time, you just came out from under a rock someplace, you don't have any idea what Jim was talking about, whatever it is, you can raise your hand and you can make a statement or ask a question, but we try to make the statements and questions brief so that Jim has a chance to answer them or respond. And so sometimes we don't get to everybody, and sometimes we switch around depending on who has been here before. And so if you, we will get to as many as we possibly can. So we're going to start this morning with Linda Bond.
Okay. So I thought that was really interesting, although I sort of felt like you went back and forth between two sort of themes, sort of what's the overall problem and what should we do now, right? And it wasn't clear to me how what we do now really related to what's the overall problem. So what I want to say is that I think what you were advocating was class-based politics, in which the unity of working people is organized to confront all of the evils of the capitalist system. And I think that that's different from what ends up being how people actually do this, which is vote for the Democrats as the lesser evil. And I'd like you sort of to respond to that. How would one organize a political participation that did not have the illusion that the Democrats represent the working class, but was more based on the interests of working people.
Yeah, I really don't disagree with you. That's why I said maybe on another occasion we can talk about that and not what we were talking about today. As I think I said in the course of the remarks, I think the last capitalist politician I voted for was John F. Kennedy, and I was young, so I should be forgiven. Who was a wonderful man in many ways, but nevertheless, I happen to think Linda's right. The problem is, and this is something I'd be interested in another time you and I could talk about this. It was interesting to me how even a number of the socialist parties, the radical socialist parties in America, in the last election, went out of their way to say, in essence, we don't generally advocate, and we're not here advocating that you vote for Biden, but this is a little different than Trump is a little different than simply Nixon or simply whatever. Or the situation is a little different in this country today. So we forgive you if you do vote in this case for Biden. I still didn't do it because I think you're right. I think fundamentally, until such time as we have changed the nature of governance and no longer have capitalist governance, our only way of effectively making about change is what we did in the Vietnam War, is what the workers did when they were forming their unions to begin with, is what Black Lives Matter did this summer. And that is take it onto ourselves, not relying on any politics. The largely young people who put together Occupy all over the country were very clear they didn't want, they also didn't want the old Marxists to be talking much either. They were going to do it a new way. The point is, what all of that had in common was the notion that no established party or institution gets where we want to go, given the overriding power of corporate America and the capitalist system. And therefore, we have to organize outside of that. And I still think that's the most important. The Lawyers Guild feels that's the most important way. We feel the most important work we do is not a lawsuit we bring, and we bring lots of lawsuits, not any number of other things we do, but keeping the movement in LA and around it in the streets is what we feel is the most important thing we do. So, so I don't really differ with what you're saying, but I don't think it hurts either when we find ourselves in this situation. If the only way if what you feel comfortable doing is getting the right people on the school board, I think that's good. I don't think that's counter productive to what myself and I suspect you in the long run want to see transpire in this country.
Thank you, Jim. Jean Gasca?
Yeah, you mentioned choice voting, and I want you to remind me about what that is. You went past that really fast.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And it's, to my surprise, it's been around. The idea's been around forever. I mean, I don't know forever, but for a long time. And it's the idea that you don't just vote for one candidate. They say there's 5 people running for office. I say, well, this is my first choice. But if that woman or guy doesn't get it, this is my second choice. And you can, so how far do you let people go with it? 3 choices, 5 choices. When the KPFK runs its board elections, and if they're going to elect 9 people to the board, you get 9 choices. First choice, second choice, third, 9 choices. And as I say, some early studies of what happens in a couple of states now have shown that the result in Alaska was sort of interesting in that regard. I mean, I fully expected, what's her name? The former vice president.
Sarah Palin.
Sarah Palin, thank you. I fully expected Sarah Palin to win. But for ranked voting, she might have. So it's, that's what it is.
Thank you so much, Jim. Craig or Claudia or Daria?
It's mute.
No, it's not. It's
Yeah.
unmuted.
Oh, can you hear us? It's
Yeah.
mute.
I can, okay, I
you
hear.
us. I want to go to the idea of tribalism, and it's related to abortion choice. And what I'm seeing with women, there's all sorts of ways when we can talk about choice versus, and abortion rights. As a physician, I've been very, very worried about the effect of these laws on the life of the mother and that sort of thing. But what is emerging that I'm sort of fascinated with, but find it really curious, is the extreme extent to which laws are made against women and to control women, and these are largely being made by white men, and and the psyche of all this, I'm sort of wondering about. It's just been unleashed, and I guess it's going back to a different era, but I'm fascinated by it. It's just vociferous, and it's largely white men, if not women, against their own interests. And when feminist thought started, I guess in the 50s and 60s, the white women were a bit racist. But as Black Lives Matters and other issues related to racism has come out, I've seen kind of a coalescing, and in fact, Black women started the Me Too movement. But I wondered if you see what I mean by the extremity of these laws and what it's unleashed in men.
Well, I do, and I touched on that so very briefly, but well, and look at Justice Barrett. I mean, and the frankly religious cult that she comes from. But it's part of the way things used to be. Women knew their place, the men have their place. Women are breeders. I mean, it's the language of the cult that the Supreme Court justice was once in has changed a little bit. But they used to even use some of the same terminology that is in, So I think it's a throwback. It's a time when men could be in control, and now that they see that they have this chance to do it, they have a court that is sympathetic. They're going, all in on it. They're not going halfway in on it. They're saying, this is our opportunity, guys, to get the way things ought to be, and by God, we're going to do it. And these legislatures, too many of them are indeed doing it. So I don't think it's any mystery why it's happening. I think you're right.
Thank you, Jim. I think we have 3 more people. And Teresa, welcome. Glad to see you.
Hi, Teresa.
You're muted, Teresa.
Okay, all right.
Oh, I hear
Well, hi, my darling Jim. Excuse me for being so personal, but
well, now you're exposing. You see now, Bonnie's not here, so it's okay.
It's all right. I think, Jim, this was the most magnificent thing I've heard. Everything you said, I happen to agree with, and was so grateful for how beautifully you put it together and brought in the history. It was just so magnificent that I have decided I'd like to try to use this and have a little Zoom group of some of my neighbors, because I think what you said is what so many people are asking and wondering, and not getting the whole picture. And everything you said was so meaningful to me that I hope to use it again. I have to get a little better with my technology, but I'm definitely going to try to get some neighbor friends together to listen to this, because we need your wisdom. And I've always counted on it. We've been a good team for many, many years. And I'm just thrilled to have you back. You're saying you're 85 or almost now. Well, I'm 87, almost 88. And how great that we can still be together and talk to everybody.
I still like older women, so
Thank you.
But I'll tell you, I'm glad you said what you said for this reason. It's, who's the famous quote, when good people do nothing and bad people prevail? I don't know, it's Howard Zinn, and lots of people probably said it. But it's so true, and it's so overwhelming today. It can be so overwhelming today that I would be far more hopeful if I had a sense that you don't have to understand all the ins and outs of this, that as any intelligent, living, breathing American that hasn't, out of fear and miseducation and whatever, taken the bad drugs, would understand how we're hanging on by a thread, and that how we've got to. I don't know why every church isn't talking about it. That it's a church that believes in what it says it believes in. I don't know why the unions aren't talking about it more. It seems to me that we are we should understand we're in crisis mode at this point in this country. Even if we don't lose what's left of our democracy, it's crisis mode at so many other levels. And so I would be even more hopeful. So I guess the question is, Black Lives Matter was able to do it. And the question is, how do we all, neighborhood stuff? I mean, that's the point. You've got to start, you start where you start, and getting people riled up, because next thing you know, there's a whole movement.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Teresa. Craig, Ollie?
Thank you. If you can hear me, thank
Yeah.
you. I want to go back to, much of what we had talked about prior to this becoming a live thing, as well as, your introduction. During this period, let's say in '64, which was a crucial moment for African Americans and specifically this nation, Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. When he did so, the Senate enjoyed a veto-proof majority, and the Senate enjoyed a veto-proof majority. Significant with that, those Dixiecrats or Democrats that were white automatically became Republican. I say that to say, in what you're saying, I think, the American public, or, the populace at whole, have a lot more in common than we do not in common. And I think the problem that we see is that literally nothing unites us anymore. A pandemic couldn't even unite us. So, as you more or less come in now, when we look back at the 60s, the media didn't play as much of a role in dividing us as they do now. And I'm wondering, since you are so much in touch with that media, if we more or less frame a discussion, how can we more or less focus on those things that can unite us as opposed to divide us, keeping in mind that, the nation is too big for folks not to profit, those in power not to profit with.
Well, I don't have quite the rosy view of the rosier view of the media that you expressed from back in the 60s. I would certainly agree that it's worse now. The number of companies that own the media now are smaller. There's less journalism. Some of us on this screen right now are very much involved, as I am, in the campaign to save the life of Julian Assange, where the United States government, we now know because of what's been released, they actually planned on kidnapping and murdering him. I mean, they've done it a different way, through this BS prosecution and all the rest of it. But journalism is indeed in trouble in this country today. I guess what I'm saying is that I don't see relief anywhere in a broad cosmic sense, except that which we can bring about independent of the normal ways of thinking about bringing about meaningful change in the country. Even as some of those ways are going on to school boards or whatever. I'm not arguing what people should do or not do there. I have my views on it. But what I am confident of is that if we hope to change what we've been talking about today, it will. If we think we can do it through the ballot box, we're mistaken. And so we've got to understand that we are the last and best hope for that happening. And we'll have to deal with the media, and we'll have to deal with laws we won't like, and we'll have to deal with a court system that has gone crazy and all sorts of things. But that's all there are, folks. It's just us.
That's it, right. Bob, Gord?
Okay. I agree with both Jim and my friend Linda in wanting to see a radical change, which would involve replacing capitalism with some form of socialism. I agree that electoral politics by itself cannot bring about the change, that kind of radical change. But I also don't think that kind of change can happen in an instantaneous manner. I think it has to, it's going to take a long time and a lot of work, and a lot of building needs to be done. I think like what you're saying, Jim, that's not just through politicians and so forth. But I do want to challenge that old phrase, the lesser of two evils. I feel as if that's that oversimplifies in a way that's not helpful. The word evil is such an absolute word. To just say, okay, I agree, Democrats are basically, pro-capitalism, but that doesn't mean that everything they are in favor of is evil. They want some good things, some things that would be better, that would make people's lives better, such as universal health care. And the mass of Republicans now want an outright fascist dictatorship, which actually I do feel is pretty evil. But if Democrats don't want that and are willing to fight against it, then there's something good about them.
Here's the way. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's just too oversimplifying to say they're both evil. And
well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let me go one step further. And therefore, I think right now electoral politics is very important. It's not everything. And I encourage people to do what Jean Gasca has persuaded me to do, which is write postcards to, states, battleground states, and try to get people to vote against Republicans. I think that's an important ingredient in what we need to do in this crisis.
Yeah, here, let me put it this way. This will kind of sum up my feelings about all of that. Let's take, for example, the Supreme Court's initial decision in Roe v. Wade. The same 9 guys who had said there was no right to abortion said there was a right to abortion when they decided Roe v. Wade. What happened? Leading up to that, millions of people took to the streets over and over and over again, went to jail on behalf of a woman's right to abortion. They left anybody who wanted to be elected from their area with no choice, if they hoped to get their vote, but to do what they were going to do. And the Supreme Court, therefore, on that day, it's not as though the Supreme Court simply woke up that day, those 9 guys said, Jesus, we've been schmucks. I mean, what were we thinking of? Of course a woman has a right to choose. What has been wrong with us? How silly us. Roe v. Wade. Hell no, it's only because of what happened in the streets. It's only because of that powerful movement. Same thing with Vietnam. Those same legislators who voted billions of dollars over and over again to kill, why did they finally decide? Because a movement unparalleled proportions was built in this country, leaving that Congress no choice but to do that. That's the point I'm making. So I don't care where you approach it from or I care less about what you do on election day, although, that's another topic. But what I care about is during the Vietnam War movement, whenever it was a presidential election, our demonstrations were smaller, unfortunately. I always hated when those elections were coming up because I knew what the effect was going to be on the next demonstration I was helping to organize, because it was better when there wasn't an election coming, because then the people could do what would end up making the politicians do what they wanted them to do anyway. You can't elect you. We didn't elect our way out of the Vietnam War. We didn't elect our way into Roe versus Wade. We didn't elect our way into recognizing unions. All of those things that were really fundamentally impactful on a capitalist system came about only because of mass movements in the streets, left the ruling class no choice but to grant that at least. And that's significant. It doesn't, it's somewhat different what you're talking about, but I think that ought not to be lost in the shuffle is what I'm saying. And I worry about that now. We got the general election, the 2-year election coming up for Congress and the presidential election. It's going to be hard for street movements in this period of time to do what I would like to see them do, frankly. Yeah. Because so many people will think, oh no, the way to do this is to simply elect this guy.
Right. Thank you so much. And then we'll end with Vincent DiStefano. Welcome.
Oh my God, you can let him? Oh, geez.
Yeah. Bob, respectfully, I would like to contradict your proposition of the lesser of two evils, and I'll give a perfect example of this. 52% of Republicans, when it is explained properly, support single-payer healthcare.
No.
A whopping 85% of Democrats understand it is a vastly superior system. In the Soviet of California, where we all live, where we have Democratic supermajorities in the House, the Senate, we own the governorship, most of the Attorney General, and most of the offices down the line. We even turned deep red Orange County blue in the last general election. They wouldn't even bring up single payer, a package that they had 3 months ago, up for a vote. And the reason they wouldn't come up for the vote is not because they were Democrats or Republicans, but they were beholden to their benefactors in the HMOs, the AMA, all of the pharmaceutical companies who benefit on the immiseration of the American people with the healthcare system we have. So unfortunately, there are differences between the Republicans and the Democrats, but unfortunately, they're the same, the different sides of the same coin. And until we take money out of politics, we'll be voting for the lesser of two evils. Jim, I see you have your hand up there.
No, you were breaking up.
But the other thing, the other point I wanted to make is something that Mordecai Anilowitz said from the Warsaw Ghetto. He said, the opposite of despair is not hope, it's struggle. And what Jim said here is that it is from the ground up that the struggle will occur. It cannot occur through elections, and I believe I've proved that with the single payer situation in California. It requires that we reach out to people. I recently spoke at a symposium on hands-off Cuba, and the main speaker is a gentleman named Carlos Lazo. He was arrested as a counter-revolutionary in Cuba. He was imprisoned in Cuba. He left Cuba on the Mariel boat lift, and he went and became part of the Miami community, which hated Castro and hated the revolution. But he created an organization called Puntes de Amor. And he said he realized that the embargo, after almost 68 years, had failed completely, except in one respect. It was starving children in Cuba. It was denying necessities to the people of Cuba. And he said, it doesn't matter whether you're left or right, Republican or Democrat, this is a question of humanity. And I think if we find a way to reach out to our brothers and sisters through humanity and show them that the things that they are supporting are divisive, and we do it with love, I think we'll find a way to do it exactly Jim suggested, a groundswell of support. I'll close in this last thing. 60 years ago also, Justice Powell, before he became a Chief Justice, wrote the Powell Memo. And he created a long march for the conservative movement. They were in the wilderness after the loss of Goldwater. And he said, we start slowly and we build from the ground up. And that memo, if you haven't read it, find it on the internet. It was a blueprint for how the right wing has taken power of our judgeships, of our Supreme Court, of the entire electoral system from school districts on up. And we need to have the same kind of long march for progressives. They have to find a way to take and create the groundswell that Jim, I think, so correctly talked about a people movement that leads the politicians, because it never works the other way around.
Well, one quickly, I know you want to wrap it. One quickly, I'm reminded what Vinny said. You're so right. I remember during the Vietnam War movement, I was invited to Hanoi, and I went with some other people in leadership positions in the movement. And you met with Van Van Dong, and after touring the country and talking also. And I remember saying to him, I said, "Well, why do you think everywhere I go, your people seem so confident that they're going to win this war against the most powerful military the world has ever seen? You know what?" He said, "Well, he said, America is a fast food nation." That's literally what he said. He said, "I think, with all due respect, the American people have little sense of history. We know how long struggle takes. We know where you begin if you want to end at a certain place. And then he recited all the foreign, invaders that they'd thrown out of Vietnam. And so our people know that it takes long, but they know where you have, and they're confident. And that's the point. We are a fast food nation. We do want to do it the easy way. And it's the easy, well, I'll just vote for the right person. My God, what more do you want me to do, Jim? I mean, well, I want you to build a movement. We'll know how they'll vote, because we'll either run this damn government or we'll finally create the government that we need. That'll be the damn choice we leave them with. Anyway.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. And thank you, all of you, for participating in the discussion. And I think we could all benefit from what Teresa Bonpane mentioned, that we could hold small group meetings on Zoom or big group meetings on Zoom. I know that we all have connections. I'm part of Human Relations Council. We have a civility committee, and we are always working on dialogue, and what those dialogues, what the shape they will take and who we will invite can vary. And I think that this gives me more food for thought about how that can vary. We have an interfaith council as well, and I'm the president of that. So we all in this room have various connections, and I think we could use those for this. We do need to move on, but I think Teresa has one closing thought.
Again, Teresa.
Okay.
Can't hear you, Teresa.
I'm trying, I know. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. I do. I just, again, I'm delighted, Janet, that you felt that there'd be a way. I think definitely I would love to work with Janet and whoever and see if we can get this discussion today out to a lot more people. And I would love to be part of that. I think it was absolutely one of the richest discussions I've been in a while, but that's one thing. And this is a little aside, but I can't help but take advantage of having Jim here and our attractive audience and whatever, to also constantly mention that everything that the church in Ocean Park does, to always remember that they still don't have a roof. And I think that we should bring that out in every church service, everything, because this is the one church, if any church should stand and be open, it's the church in Ocean Park. And I'm so sorry that we have not gotten the funds together, that I want to take advantage of every time I have to say, I, for one, will definitely try to contribute more than I have in the past. We've got to get a roof on this most important church, because it houses all of our love and our ethics and our politics and everything else. It's more than a building. It is a community. And I want very much to be part of trying to bring more money in so that they can have that. But again, and I thank you so much for bringing Jim to us today. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me.
Amen. Amen on that church. I asked Janet about that before we got started. I mean, I sort of understand why, but why the United Methodist Church, or whatever the adult body is that's over this, I'm not surprised they learned they haven't bailed you out. They got, millions and billions for everything else, but a couple $100,000 for a church like Church in Ocean Park, probably not. So we got to do it otherwise.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for your ongoing support always. And I will put in the chat the way to donate, so people can do it right now. Thank you both so much. And we go on to a song from Louise.
ever there was a time to sing together, now is the time, now is the time. Come and sing with me, sing in harmony. Healing Spirit, come to us, help us find our way to each other. If ever there was a time to sing together, now is the time, now is the time. Come and sing with me, sing in harmony. Healing Spirit, come to us, help us find our way to each other. Help us find our way to each other.
Let's sing to Jax, Charlie, and Rama. Linda's family. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Jax. Happy birthday, dear Charlie. Happy birthday, dear Rama. Happy birthday to you.
Okay, last quick song. Where we sit is holy, holy is this ground. Forest, mountain, river, listen to the sound. Great Spirit moving all around me. Where we sit is holy, holy is this ground. Forest, mountain, river, listen to the sound. Great Spirit moving all around me. Where we sit is holy, holy is this ground. Forest, mountain, river, listen to the sound. Great Spirit moving all around me. One more time now. Where we sit is holy, holy is this ground. Forest, mountain, river, listen to the sound. Great Spirit moving all around me. Great Spirit moving all around me.
Thank you, and thank you all once again for being with us. And we will be putting out words to different gatherings we can have to follow up with today's talk. I'm glad that Teresa brought that up, and I'm sure that there are ways that we will be able to follow up on that. So everybody unmute now for a second. We're going to say together, carry on, and we hold hands together in a big circle, a wide circle, and we say together, carry on. 1, 2, 3.
Carry on.
Yeah.
Wonderful day.
Carry on together.
More joy.